Tonight on the Black Channel, we're going to have a conversation about the problem with America. As you all know, today is July 4th, which is American Independence Day, or at least Independence Day for some people. But as those of us who are the descendants of the slaves, we have always had a different perspective on this. Everything that America celebrates as being great about itself has always been shrouded in hypocrisy. That is a difference between us and everyone else. Let me explain to you a couple of the differences here. You long heard it said that we are the only group of people who have never taken up arms against the American government. There's been a Mexican-American war. There has been an Indian-American war. America has fought against the British, the French, essentially the Spanish, everybody else, knocked out all the colonizers, get them all out the way. We are the only group who have not taken up arms against the United States government. We are the only group that has had acts of aggression committed against us and yet have never taken up arms against the United States government. Everyone for the last 300 years has been waiting for that day to occur, that we, the people most brutalized, the people most oppressed, the people most attacked by the American government, they have all been sitting and wondering, when is the day going to come that we are going to have some mass uprising against the American government? Because the rest of them are like, they did, and yet we haven't. There have been no religious wars fought against the American government by us. There's never been something like that has occurred. We have been the most aggrieved people on American soil, and yet we have been the most loyal people on American soil. Let me say that again. We have been the most aggrieved people on American soil, and simultaneously we have been the most loyal people on American soil. No one has had to overcome or rationalize what we have. No one has existed as being legally oppressed as 3/5 of a person, which really means non-personhood, and then immediately thereafter, in all of your conflicts, when we were no longer chattel slaves, we were the ones who had absolutely no reason whatsoever to show up with Teddy Roosevelt, none whatsoever, and there we were. We absolutely had no reason to show up under Woodrow Wilson. We had no reason whatsoever to show up for World War I. No reason to show up and support the country for World War II at all. Absolutely not. We were infamously fighting for freedoms that we did not have. And there are, by the way, for all the folks who want to deny us reparations, there are Black World War II veterans still alive to this day. To this day. Men who fought for freedoms that they did not have. Men who were fighting for freedoms for white Europeans, white Jews, white French, white British, white Americans, fighting for freedoms that they themselves did not have. Those are the most loyal people you will ever find. They were being abused by people, and yet fighting for those people's freedoms that they themselves didn't have. I have to remind you all that during World War II, when American soldiers captured the Nazis, they loved to show you movies like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, particularly Saving Private Ryan. But what they don't show you is that even though there was a world war on, the bottom line was these were two white supremacist nations. Two white supremacist societies. America, the white supremacist society that taught Nazi Germany how to do what it did. You can Google this for yourselves. The apartheid laws, the segregation laws, the miscegenation laws. Nazi Germany learned all of those from America. Goebbels and others studied American cinema. Don't believe me if you've never actually taken a look at the history books and read the history of Joseph Goebbels and where he learned what he learned. Joseph Goebbels studied American cinema. Nazi officers studied America's laws, and when they overthrew the Weimar Republic, when the National Socialists overthrew the Weimar Republic, they were able to very quickly institute what they saw America do. They said, hey, there's a place that has instituted this on a mass level. They took a look at eugenics. They took a look at phrenology. They said, there's a nation prosperous, rich, influential. So there's our model for how it can be done. Do not believe me. Google it and look it up for yourselves. Don't believe me. Some of you have your minds blown. Wait a minute. America taught Nazi Germany? America didn't learn it? No. America didn't learn anything from Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany learned it all from America. And this is why it is so important. That part isn't even in your history books now. Black people are worried about them removing slavery from the history books, and the true teaching of who taught Nazi Germany to be the annihilationist white supremacist state that it was, that isn't even taught in your history books now. For most of you listening to me, that's never been in any of your history books. None of you. None of you can show me any of your school books that showed that. None of you. Your parents didn't talk to you about that. Your grandparents didn't talk to you about that because they didn't know. That is something that's relegated to your higher universities, your Ivy League universities. Your HBCUs don't even teach this. If you're going to teach about Black history, your HBCUs do not even teach this. When they talk about the Second World War and the evils of Nazi Germany, they put it in the context of Nazis and Jews, white Jewish people. They do not put it in its proper, accurate context. That this is a white supremacist state and all of them studied at the feet of America. And that they learned by persecuting Black people. That was where they learned it. That's where they learned it. And now I have to reintroduce you to this knowledge today. I have to reintroduce you to that today because you haven't been taught that in your schools. Your parents didn't know. Your grandparents didn't know. Your HBCUs can't tell you. MSNBC isn't going to say it because then you will be putting World War II in its proper context, and you realize that it centers around the worldview of who shall rule the world to oppress Black people in the name of white supremacy. That is why even during World War II, white American soldiers in the mess halls, the white American soldiers sat next to the white Nazi soldiers that they had taken prisoner. The Black American soldiers were segregated in the mess halls, in the chow halls. The white American soldiers sat next to the Nazi soldiers. Google it. Look it up for yourselves. Most of you already know by now. But yes, sir. Segregation was not based on nationality. Segregation was based on race. And the American soldiers were far more comfortable sitting next to white Nazis than they were Black Americans. There is something about your blackness that transcends everything. including when white nations go to war against each other. You are a useful tool to them, like Jesse Owens during the Munich Olympics. You are a useful tool, but the key word here is tool. You see, America could proudly cheer for Jesse Owens. You know why? Because he didn't have the stench of Jack Johnson on him. Jesse Owens did not have the stench of being a black man who physically dominated white men and then physically emasculated them by taking their women. Jack Johnson was a prototype and an example of pure dominance. He dominated the men physically and then literally physically dominated their women. That was a crime against white society that couldn't stand. But Jesse Owens didn't do that. Joe Louis didn't do that. Keep that in mind. These were not individuals who assaulted the white consciousness, not the way Jack Johnson did. And so because of that, they could be useful. Joe Louis could be useful against Max Schmeling. Jesse Owens could be useful in Munich. But both of them returned to societies that did not recognize their humanity. To the point that one story goes that even Max Schmeling had to contribute to have Joe Louis buried. We are the only people who can rightfully, truthfully accuse America of being at its core hypocritical. We can rightly accuse that. Jason, why do you say so? Jason, why do you say so? Because everybody else sat at the table, drank from the cup of iniquity, broke bread with and signed deals, literal written deals. Their nation states signed deals with America. We never did that. These other nations ceded their laws, ceded their properties, ceded their lands. Napoleon Bonaparte and the French, they ceded their properties in America. We didn't. The so-called 5 civilized tribes of America, the Native Americans, they sat down and signed treaties, acknowledging that they were giving away theirs, acknowledging that they were signing over theirs. We never did that. All these other people, they have acknowledged what they signed away. Whether the deals were janky or not, they acknowledged what they signed away. We never signed anything. There are no treaties that the former slaves, when we became the freemen, there's no treaties that we signed. None. Everything that has been done to us has happened to us without our will and without our permission. That's the difference between us and everyone else. Everyone else there, when you talk about the Native Americans, please understand, they became slave owners. They became slave owners as a group. Had no reason to involve themselves in that, and yet they drank from the cup along with these other people. We did not. And before some jackass sits up here and tries to tell you that often bandied about lie about black people were slave owners too, number one, Black people have never bought white slaves. Oh, sorry, there were none to be bought. Number 2, there are no sprawling black plantations. You cannot find them. They don't exist. I should know. I'm from Louisiana. There are no sprawling large black plantations. There are no sprawling black sugar plantations, cotton plantations, corn plantations, tobacco plantations. There are no black people today who show pictures of their great-great-great-great-granddaddy standing in the fields and the acres where their families got rich and wealthy. Don't let these white supremacists, the Fox News Nazis, and the rest of them sit up here and lie to you. Black people were not plantation owners. They owned slaves. No, they bought their people out of slavery. They didn't buy them out of slavery and then put them in the fields. Stop letting people lie to you. Tell them, show me the large black plantations. Show me the pictures. Show me the black folk. Show me the black Paula Deen. Show them to us, because so far we can't find a single one. Show it to us. Don't talk about it. Show it. They'll bring you nothing. They'll bring you absolutely nothing. Let's be very, very clear about that. They bring you nothing. Because they know the truth that when you walk through the history of this nation, you see the same thing over and over and over again. You see the same thing all the time. If you all agree with what I'm saying here tonight, give me the fire emoji in the chat room and hit the likes button. Give me the fire emoji in the chat room and hit the likes button. Stopping here tonight because I want to remind you of where you've been so that you understand what the problem with America is. No one else can justifiably or accurately accuse America of hypocrisy from its very founding. May I tell you, the Native Americans started doing trade with the Europeans when the Europeans first showed up. Even though it was very clear something was wrong. Even though it was very clear something was wrong. Among the Native Americans, they had wars among themselves, but they didn't target the Europeans the same way. The so-called red Native Americans need to have a heart-to-heart moment with themselves to ask themselves, why is that? And thank you to everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Christine West, and everybody else there. Nancy King, thank you for your support. Because everybody else is taking the day off, we're taking the day on. Nobody asked them how they did that. Nobody asked them, by the way, have you all done an inventory about how that occurred and why it occurred? Have you asked yourselves any questions? Why would that be? They call black people savages. They call black people savages. You know why they say that? When they say they call them savages. Because, well, when we showed up on their shores, they started killing folk. If you go in those places, they ain't gonna try to make friends with you. They gonna try to cook you up. Which is not true. But even today, when they refer to North Sentinel Island, they refer to you as savages. Any black person who does not throw the doors open, they refer to them as savages. And Yet where would the Native Americans be today if they had been a bit more quote unquote savage? Where would they be today? I wonder. And then again, they have to wonder too. In the state of what is now known as Hawaii, what would have happened if they had been a bit more savage? A bit more, quote, savage. When the colonialists and imperialists showed up on their shores, what would have happened to Japan had they been a bit more, quote, savage? When Captain Perry and the black ships showed up for them, what would have happened? Yes, everyone loves to pat you on the back and talk about how civilized you are as they lead you off to the stockades and the cages. Well, you're very civilized. We like that. Oh, pretty good, you. All right, get your ass in this cage. And now they're going to show you true barbarism. The folks who congratulated you for being so civilized are now about to show you some real barbarism. The French signed with them and drank from the cup, and as America continued its colonization, the French did the same thing and continues to this day. France continues it to this day. France is a third world nation that survives by leeching and sucking the blood off of their various imperial holdings from the last couple of centuries. France is a third world nation. They have nothing. They have everything they have today by stealing it from their former imperial holdings, which they try to hold to this day as current imperial holdings. France has nothing. That's why there are people turned up in the streets tonight. Because this is not something new, this is something old. And once again, in France, you can be useful as tools that enrich the nation. So you can be their football, i.e. soccer stars, but you will not be holders of the wealth. You can be used to enrich their ball clubs, but that makes you a tool. You are not the holders of the wealth. You sit there at the mercy and the leisure of the wealth holders. That's the way it'll remain. In Britain, it's the same thing. And in America, it's becoming the same thing. You'll stay here at their leisure. We are the only people who have been able to rightfully and justifiably accuse and convict America of hypocrisy at its core. We are the only ones who can do that. The only ones. And that is why it is so important to them to silence us. It is so important to them to shut us up. It is of absolute importance to them to keep us quiet. We can't be allowed to speak. We can't be allowed to talk. We can't be allowed to broadcast on a mass basis. You can't let this happen. Almost 20 years ago, people were talking about Barack Obama. Today, the conversation is radically different. You cannot allow black people to get together and talk about themselves in their proper context. You see, this is not a place that gets up every week and talks about history lessons per se. Because it's important for you to know your history, but it's 10% is knowing your history, 90% is acting on it. Not just talking, acting. Now that you know your place in history, you now know what the code is. And once you know what the code is, you know now how your daily actions need to execute that code. So when someone says to me, July 4th is coming, the first thing I have to ask is, what part of July 4th can I look back on my history and be proud of? I can see how you can take a look at your fathers and George Washington, Chief Plantation Overseer Thomas Jefferson, Chief Butcher, and all the rest of them. I can see why you'd be proud of that. If a person can be proud of barbarism, if a person can be proud of savagery, I can see how you can be proud of that. Ask me what I can do to be proud of that. That's the question I want answered. I can see how you're proud of it. You tell me. What part of my history on this soil should I be remembering and invoking when you say Independence Day and July 4th? Tell me what part I should be. And watch as the room takes on a deafening silence. Watch as they tell you, oh, well, that's up to you. No, it ain't up to me. You tell me the part of it that you're proud of, and then we'll see if both of us as, quote, proud Americans can both be proud of the same thing. If you can be proud of it, why the hell can't I be proud of it? As an American. See, when you're white and you go overseas, you can be proud of jazz music. Kenny G and the rest of them, Brian Culberson, they can be proud of jazz music. When they take a look at that, we built something that has never, ever oppressed them. They don't have any negative memories of jazz music. When their grandfathers were brought in and introduced to it, there was no one there to kick the feet out from under them, segregate them, push them out, turn these into rotten, evil memories for them. And their children have learned to love and embrace it. And we can go down the list of the blues, rock and roll, rap and hip hop. Their children have never been given this as a bad thing. Their experiences have been radically different from ours. They can never look back at a time in jazz that they were outcasts. They can never look back at a time in blues that they were outcasts. Go take a look at the movie Great Balls of Fire, starring Dennis Quaid. Jerry Lee Lewis, at the very beginning, he was outside of a barn or whatever, one of the black honky-tonks. He's standing there and watching the black folks dance around. That was how he got introduced to the music of the legends of America. There wasn't anybody there saying, get this little white boy around here. Take your little ass back to the white side of town. We never did that. That would be barbarism. We have never done that. We have never targeted other people's children. He ain't setting nothing on fire. Not yet, anyway. He's not bothering anything. He's not making no trouble. And besides, if we do run him off, he'll probably call the police and do a Carolyn Bryant. So just lay low. And now today they have taken what we have built and what we have created. They marched around the world with it. They identified themselves with what we made. And the reason they can do that is because they can look at it proudly. Now, what they usually do is they only take it back so far. They'll go just a little bit beyond themselves. It's like you can't lie just yet and say white folk made jazz. Not just yet. Not just yet. But they try to give themselves 80% of the credit of it But the only reason that they can is because there is not a negative history look back on it. We have given them something they can be proud of. And let's be clear, white folk can be proud of Scott Joplin the same way that we are. I say same in quotations, not identical to us. But white people can look at Scott Joplin with reverence the way that we do. There was nothing hypocritical about Scott Joplin. There isn't anything about Scott Joplin that requires them to sacrifice their humanity to acknowledge his greatness. How the hell do we, as the freedmen, how do we acknowledge the, quote, greatness of George Washington without sacrificing our dignity to do so? How do we do that? How do we acknowledge the so-called civic genius of Thomas Jefferson without sacrificing our own humanity and our own dignity? How do we do that? How do we acknowledge the Constitution of the United States as, quote, the greatest document in human history without recognizing that you must sacrifice and subjugate your own humanity to say those words? The white folk don't have to do that. We do. We do. And to this day, that has never been acknowledged. It is not enough to say there was original sin. It is only enough to acknowledge that to say there is greatness of America is to say hypocrisy. Words they don't use. If you truly wish to swipe clean America's slate of barbarism, its blood-drenched history of atrocities that continue this day, you are going to have to turn around and face the entire crime. You don't get to take it in bits and pieces. You have to acknowledge the whole thing. And you have failed to do this in America. America has failed to do this. The only thing they want to swipe clean now and wipe clean is their atrocities. Now that they want to wipe clean, that they want to erase from memory, which only serves to substantiate and prove even more they have not changed. A human being can understand forgiveness for an organism that has changed and evolved and is no longer the evil, wretched thing that it once was. There was a reason we could stand next to John Brown, but they started calling him crazy. That was a man who found religion. And unlike the rest of them, he said to himself, I cannot hold this Bible in one hand and oppress these people on the other. And they call him crazy because he went beyond just talking and actually went to the doing phase. That is somebody who is asking for your forgiveness. And he is asking for it not through his words, but through his actions. Not through his words, but through his actions. That's the point. The problem with America is that America's unifying philosophy is white supremacy, and the barometer with which it judges the health of white supremacy, as I've taught you now, going on 2 decades, America measures the health of its nation and its society by looking at how low we are. There's only one way in the world that you can have such a consistency of where black people are socioeconomically across these centuries. It can't get that way. It can't be that consistent unless it is engineered. You couldn't have so many people operating so uniformly, and the results that we have come out so uniformly across the decades and the centuries. It can't happen unless it's engineered, unless it's planned, unless it's agreed upon. You can't have something that runs this way. Oppressing us is a holiday. Oppressing us is the religion. Oppressing us is America. And that is why even the so-called non-white immigrants who come over here, the first order of business is to adopt a racist attitude, not toward non-white people, not toward non-white people, toward black people. Toward black people. You can't have this uniformity of outcome without that occurring. Everyone who comes here understands when you say you are, quote, American. Even the ones who just get here understand, oh, that means anti-black. You just saw affirmative action get ruled to be illegal and invalid in higher education. And who was it was pushing it? Who was it who was pushing it? Who was it who was doing that? Who was it who was behind that? You have never seen black people go to other people's nations and tell them that they need to forget about things. You have never seen us go to other people's nations and tell them that. You've never seen us go to China and tell them they need to disregard the rape of Nanking. You have never seen us go to Japan and tell the Japanese that they need to disregard Hiroshima and Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You have never heard us go to other people's nations and tell them what they need to ignore and overlook. But you hear them come to us all the damn time. Get lockstep with everybody. They come in the door, lockstep with everyone. Just as you have never seen black people take up arms against, shall I say, the descendants of the slaves, take up arms against the American government, you have likewise never seen us go abroad and internationally and deny the experiences of oppression of these other people. There is no black version of Dinesh D'Souza anywhere. There is no black version of this Ramaswamy clown anywhere. There is no black version of Michelle Malkin going to the Philippines or Thailand or anywhere else anywhere. There is no black version of us traveling the globe, using our passports to go to other people's societies and tell them what they don't need to be upset about. Nowhere. And we're everywhere around the globe, but we're not going everywhere around the globe practicing barbarism, practicing destabilization, practicing denial of their humanity. But you have a never-ending stream of it against us. We don't see it as our place to do so. We don't see it as something that we can reconcile. But more importantly, it's not something we desire to do. We have been trying to lift ourselves out of oppression and poverty. We are not going around trying to get other people comfortable with their own. And we're certainly not telling them that they need to disregard what's happened to them. And the problem with America is that America sees its legacy. It's targeting us. The problem with America is that you are living in a nation that is so wicked that when black people finally did get into a position at least to have some sort of legislation that would protect us, they are now telling you that the legislation that was created specifically to protect us, that they will now use it to oppress us, that they will use it to protect other people and say that we're in the wrong. 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments have now been weaponized against the very descendants of the slaves that they were created to protect. The 13th Amendment had a loophole in it large enough to fly a 777 through. And they've been using it ever since. Now the 14th Amendment is being used to say, oh, well, giving black people any protection is unequal treatment. Even though we have never gotten protection from the 14th Amendment, they're now telling us that the rest of society needs protection from the 14th Amendment. Black people haven't gotten protection of the 14th Amendment. They're telling us, no, we need to protect society from the 14th Amendment. This is George Orwell. This is doublespeak. This is Nazism. And this is barbarism. You're dealing with a nation that is so wicked, etched in its bones. White supremacy is the disease that is etched and carved into the very bone marrow of America. They have been dismantling all the things that were put in place for us, the Voting Rights Act, affirmative action, and I warned you all that the Civil Rights Acts are next now. Just remember that I told you that the Civil Rights Acts are next. They will most likely use the white LGBT community as their wedge to push that one, but they will remember the same white folk who claim that they didn't. Y'all was taking a look at white supremacy, and what they said is, you know what, we're going to dismantle affirmative action and the 14th Amendment, and we will use non-white people to do it. We will attack the rights of black people, and we will use non-white people to do it. The very immigrants that you all were taking a look at and saying, well, don't worry, they're not cool with them. And yet all this time, black people were disregarding the fact that they're not treating these newcomers the way they did us. They give them refugee assistance. They give them government programs. They give them SBA loans. To those of you who live in Spanish-speaking parts of America, there are billboards. I've seen them. I've seen them in Florida. I've seen them in Texas. I've seen them in California. Billboards where they will help you. We've covered it here on this program. Billboards where if you speak Spanish, they will help you to acquire government assistance, government business assistance, government loans, government grants, specifically if you speak Spanish. Didn't ask if you're a citizen, just if you speak Spanish. In New York City, they are spending $1/3 billion. $1/3 billion a year and rising. That number isn't still, by the way. It was $1/3 billion and rising to give unearned benefits to trespassers and illegal aliens in New York City. What could black people in New York have done if you gave 300 black people in New York City $1 million apiece? What could the black population of New York City have done over the course of a decade? If you gave the $330 million what they're spending to house the illegal aliens and rising, go ahead and raise that to $500 million. Could you imagine giving $1 million to 500 black businesses, 500 aspiring black entrepreneurs in New York City. Could you imagine what would happen? Could you imagine what could be done? 500 black folk with $1 million. And then just do that not for 50 years, just do that for 5 years. Just 5. 2,500 black folk. The same money that you claim you didn't have before. Oh, this is crazy. This is stupid. We can't afford that. And then you instantaneously created it out of thin air to give to illegal aliens to make sure that they got a firm foundation so that they can supplant black people here. Imagine what could have happened if they had done this before now for black folk there with the same money and resources that they claim they didn't have. You talk about Chicago. Now they're giving spending $50 million at least. You might as well make that $100 million in Chicago to finance illegal aliens, Spanish-speaking illegal aliens. Imagine if Chicago was spending $100 million and gave $1 million to 100 black people. Imagine what could be done by people in the area, on the south side, on the west side. Imagine what could have been done and what could be done today with them sitting there telling you what they don't have. You think about that for a few moments. They've been building up the north side. What could some black folk with proper funding do? With $1 million on the south side, on the west side, what could you do? Meanwhile, they're taking money from us and giving it to everybody else, and then telling us what they don't have. The problem with America is that America is engaged in a race war against black people. The problem with America is that America is willing to use entire whole fractions of its gross domestic product it considers subjugating us a tax. America is willing to pay its black tax. Subjugating us costs money. People keep talking about that. Yeah, you're right, it does. Subjugating us costs money. Takes resources, takes time, it costs. And America has shown that it is more than willing to pay that tax bill. It is more than pleased to pay that tax bill. It just sees it as a tax that it must pay every year to ensure the status quo. The problem with America is that its core principle of white supremacy is based on injustice. This is why you cannot allow black people from the soil to rise, because you see, black people from the soil who rise will institute a system of justice. It is not enough to walk into a court of law and get justice. Lady Justice can't be blind. Not in the white supremacist system. Lady Justice has to have one eye open so she can see who's walking in here. Black people from the soil will institute a system of justice. A system of justice that persecutes none. And you would actually have to live by it. I say again that black people from the soil would institute a system of justice and you would have to live by it. We would not institute a system of justice that's got loopholes in it that allow injustice. That's the reason that we cannot be allowed to run this thing, because at the end of the day, you are in a system of injustice, not a system of justice, and they know that you will eliminate the injustices. Black people are a problem when we're poor. Black people with resources and power, oh, that's not just a problem, that's downright deadly dangerous. You cannot be allowed to do that. You cannot be allowed to do that. As black people, we know what it is like to thrive on an even playing field. We don't need any judges to put their thumb on the scales. We've proven throughout the centuries that we have the ability to exceed and excel. Even with folks putting their finger on the scales, even when the scales are tipped in their favor, we still can overrun them. We're the only folk who've proven that. We don't need injustice in order to excel. We don't need that. We don't require injustice in order to be good. The white supremacist society needs injustice. They need unfairness. You all saw my documentary Race War. Richard Spencer sat right there and told you straight out, no, I don't believe in fairness. No. But sir, if you truly believe in the inherent intellectual superiority of white people, then if you are inherently superior, you don't require the extra inefficiency of injustice. You would just get out there and be the damn best in the world at what you do. It would be as simple and easy as breathing. But you see, white supremacy can only succeed from the shadows. White supremacy can only succeed from the shadows. If you want to get rid of white supremacy, if you want to make sure it can't work, best way to do that is put eyes on it. Jason, what do you mean by that? When people talk about sports, you know why white supremacy can't win in sports? Because you got thousands and thousands or millions of people all watching at the same time. And when you have so many people watching, you can't commit injustice that way. There are too many witnesses. There are too many people. You can't lie. You can't get enough of them to go along with it. So when you got too many people watching and too many people looking, injustice can't live there. Too many people watching does that. Injustice can exist in a courtroom where they can kick out all the cameras and turn off the lights and make sure folks can't see. It can exist in a courtroom where they can run off the gallery and run off the jury and it's just the judge and the prosecutor. Kyle Rittenhouse. There's enough of them to be able to do that. No, they don't do it in boxing. Go to sleep. Nobody sits there and watches. If somebody was watching over the judge's shoulders the whole time, it'd be different. Go back to bed. When you've got a bunch of people watching something, injustice isn't going to make it. Injustice, you cannot have systemic injustice when you've got so many witnesses. That's why they need to make sure you cannot see. This is why contract law is so important to them. Remember when Kanye West put out his record contract for folks to see some of the absolutely Byzantine, look it up, to see absolutely catacomb nature of those contracts. it actually defies etymology and language when you take a look at Kanye West's music contract. And this is from me, a very literate person. That contract defies language and etymology. That contract doesn't facilitate it, it defies it. You literally don't know what you're reading. Why would someone want something so incredibly onerous to decipher? Why is it that it's not very clearly decipherable? Because they're trying to rob you. And if everyone could see what this actually says, then you could stop it from being unjust. And remember, they wanted to sue him for publishing it, remember? There was the other thing. Not only did they not want him to understand it, remember, everybody got upset. I showed you right here in my program. There were a bunch of white folk who were upset with him on Twitter for posting the contract. Now, aren't these the same white folk who applauded Julian Assange and applauded Edward Snowden and applauded Woodward and Bernstein for publishing government documents, for shedding light on the dark side of the government document? Aren't these the same white folk who applauded them? And yet that's the government. Something as critical as government. Something as crucial to keep secrets as government. And they applauded them universally. But a black man showing what this white corporation was doing, when people know historically white corporations victimize people all the time. Hey, they all got on code. Hey, stop that. You quit that. You're wrong. You shouldn't be publishing that. You signed the deal. They closed ranks. They closed ranks. So that's why they love contracts. They love contracts when they can take you behind closed doors and take you back over there in the back room over there, and nobody can see and nobody can hear. Because when you got a bunch of witnesses, it's going to be a mathematical certainty you will not be able to fool all of them. There's going to be somebody in that group who's going to see it and be like, hey, I can tell y'all what actually happened. It is imperative that you not be allowed to see. White supremacy needs that. The problem with America is this culture of deception. And it deceives people by putting blindfolds on them, not allowing them to see, making sure they can't talk to each other. Silencing you is so important. Keeping you quiet is so important. Even if you are bubbling over with rage, if you don't have the ability to articulate why you are upset, you won't move. You won't move. It's absolutely essential that you not be allowed to speak to each other when they put together the slave codes. Don't y'all understand? It was very important that black folk not be allowed to talk to each other. Yes, because if we talk to each other, we start asking uncomfortable questions to the dominant society, such as, I know what you all said we saw, but now that those folk ain't here to interfere in our discussion, did you all really see that? Was that really what we saw? Or did we see something else? You'll all remember for the longest damn time the American government swore at one side and down the other Malcolm X was killed. And there was Nation of Islam gunmen. And most importantly, that the government and the New York Police Department didn't have nothing to do with that. That was a conspiracy theory. Oh, we didn't have nothing to do with that. Conspiracy theory. And leaving to the side any possible avenues about the Nation of Islam, now you got it. Decades later, the truth has come out. What folks have been saying the whole damn time. Malcolm X's killers were walking the streets. They were walking the streets in America. America is the only place where folks who kill our icons can walk the streets. Carolyn Bryant was able to walk the streets. Her whole damn family was walking the streets. Malcolm X's killers walking the streets. Mississippi Burning walking the streets. We are the only people that you can say that about. And what that means is that the problem with America is America has a doctrine of domestic terrorism against us. So that is why I want you to come here today. And if you are going to discuss July 4th and independence, then I am going to remind you of who we are as a people. And we are a people as the freemen in America. We are the people who have adopted an identity of resistance. Don't come to me with none of this damn junky, druggy rap music. You need to have music that programs you with resistance. Music that wakes you up, not music that narcotizes you. You need to have movies and films that speak to your higher mind, your intellect, your intelligence, that teach you to think in layers, not simple-minded drivel. You need to ingest books that are straightforward and give you straight strategies, not things that confuse you, so that you may resist. The greatness and the genius of our music over the centuries is because we have understood what we're supposed to be here to do. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Resistance. I know I've been saved. Resistance. Ragtime music, resistance. The blues, resistance. Rock and roll, resistance. When you get to the 70s, even in disco music, resistance. Earth, Wind and Fire, Marvin Gaye, Gil Scott-Heron, our luminaries gave us a legacy of resistance. Rap music was created out of our culture of resistance. And we did what we have always done. On the slave plantations, black folk were dancing around. They were dancing to the music of resistance right up until the day they picked up their pitchforks. Right until they picked up their machetes. Dance time is over. Dance time is over. You see the same thing happen in the 1960s. They go the sock hop. They go the juke joint. They be dancing and everything else. Soon as something happens, it's time to light this son of a gun up. You get to the 70s and the 80s. The music was bumping. The houses was jumping. And as soon as they beat up Rodney King and said not guilty, the roof is on fire along with the whole damn side of your town. I thought y'all was gonna sit there and dance. There is a reason, let me tell you right now, there is a reason why over the course of the last 30 years that the dominant society that their kids have been playing country music, playing loud out of their vehicles to this day. But when folks hear that those bass notes hit, they recognize that as the war drum of resistance. They've been hearing it for decades now. Let me go ahead and give you all a little bit of music engineering school so that you understand this. In typical music mix downs, typically when you are doing a mix down on music, the loudest thing is going to be the human voice. In typical music recordings in the studio, the loudest thing will be the human voice. And then you're typically, when they first do music, they usually do the drums first when they lay down the tracks. They do everything else. But the human voice, when you do the mastering, the mixing and the mastering, usually it's going to be the loudest thing is the human voice. You don't want everything else overpowering it. So you want them to hear the human voice. That's typically what's been done. That's from European culture. European culture, when you go to the opera singer is wailing over everybody else. Pavarotti and the rest of them, they're wailing over everybody else. The orchestra can't hardly be heard over them because they're sitting there wailing over them. You can't be considered to be a good opera singer if you're not. Same thing in German choirs, same thing in British choirs, same thing in France, same thing in Spain, same thing in Japan. If you listen to traditional Japanese music, especially with the female voice is usually squealing over any of the instruments. It is very important to them that the human voice be heard. Then you got to us, and we created something new. And when we got done, there's an old interview with Chuck D talking about that, where he was in the studio, and when they were doing the mixes for Public Enemy, he said, the white engineers kept raising my voice, and I told them no. He turned his down and turned the bass up. And he said, they were telling me, you're turning the bass up too loud. People aren't going to be able to make out you over the bass. You're increasing the percussion too much. They won't be able to make out you, your voice, over the bass. And Chuck D said, that's the point. It's not to drown out his voice, but it's that our music isn't vocal heavy. Our music is rhythm heavy. This is something that the white engineers could not wrap their minds around because they were indoctrinated in the traditional way of doing things. We are a people who have always respected the war drum. This is why I'm telling you, when we go onto the dance floor, we ain't out there to dance. We out there to go to work. As Dr. John Henry Clark said, we out-pope the Pope and out-mammon mammon. We put our all into everything. Dude, this is serious business. And white folk look at you crazy right up until they have a talent contest. The white folk look at you crazy right until you have a talent contest. Then all of a sudden, a chill goes down their spine when they see the black folk walk into the room. A chill goes down their spine. Because these folks are not used to the idea of giving their all, implanting and imparting their heart and their soul into a dance. They're like, what the hell wrong with you? They're not used to that idea. They're not used to that. Why did you all see the need to turn the bass up? Because we understood that bass was something you could feel. Bass operates at a different frequency than trebles do. So you see, you can be in a car, turn on the bass, and you can feel it through your damn bones and organs. You can't do that with a wailing guitar or a horn. We found something different. We found something that was a deeper science. Something that they didn't see. Now that they see it, man, you hear bass drums now in country damn me music today. Don't believe me? You can look it up. They got bass drums and bass kick drums in country music now. country music, heavy metal. They got bass kick drums in country music and heavy metal now. They didn't know it and they didn't discover it until we showed up. They were trying to carry on the traditions of their fathers. No innovation. We, without all that historical baggage on us, were able to innovate in ways the rest of them never have. And oh yeah, one more thing. We didn't need injustice to do it either. We didn't have to steal anything from anybody either. We didn't have to take anything from anyone either. We didn't have to rob nobody. We didn't have to disenfranchise anyone. We didn't have to commit theft. We didn't have to deceive anybody. We were able to demonstrate that the European idea of capitalism is phony and immoral. You really can build something great and you don't have to screw anybody or deceive anyone or cheat anybody to do it. The idea that behind every great fortune is a great crime, that's not true unless the white supremacists show up. We prove that you can earn your way to greatness. We proved it. But their goal is not to earn their way there. Their goal is just to get there no matter what happens. And that is why the problem with America is a fundamental, intrinsic moral deficiency. When you start out from day one and you are looking across plantation fields and you are denying the humanity of those people there, understand you have a poisonous machine that you are building. When you make the core of your philosophy to wage a racial war against a group of people who have actually been your most loyal subjects, you have a morally bankrupt, poisonous machine that you're building. Because let us be very, very clear about this. Let's be very clear about this. If you are so easily able to deny the humanity of black people 100%, then that explains why it is that you are able to deny the humanity of your children, of your women, of yourselves so easily. That explains that. When black people took to the streets in the wake of George Floyd's murder, and then you see the police up there, wasn't in Boston, an old man shoved him down till he cracked the back of his head and he's bleeding on the sidewalk. An old white man. And he found out that his whiteness was no shield, that they cut their teeth of barbarism against us, and now they're going to turn on the rest of you. Because you have to remember your history. When you remember the Spanish Inquisition, that was white people targeting white people. When you remember the Crusades, those were white people targeting white people. When you remember most of the revolutions in history, those were white monarchies targeting white people, and then white people who rose up against them. Yeah, if you've forgotten your history, you've forgotten that the very folks that you are backing and putting your faith in, why, they've got a history, though, of targeting you. And the truth of the matter is that the last 500 years of targeting black people has actually been the anomaly. Let me say it again. The last 500 years of specifically targeting us in America has been the anomaly. When you go back before that, oh boy, that's not very encouraging now, is it? Not very encouraging that you're sitting there and empowering an oligarchy that over the course of the last 2,000 years, you might want to take a second look at the folks who they were targeting most. And now they've seen a way to greatly enrich themselves. What do you think they're going to start doing here as time goes on? You think they're done? You think they're through? You think they've lost their appetites? You think they've let that go? You think they ain't ready to break down and get down in a moment's notice with each other? Take a look at the Ukraine. Take a look at all your world wars. You think they ain't ready to get down with each other in a moment's notice? While some dumb white supremacist jackass is sitting up here empowering, and I'm like, by the way, buddy, you probably forgot that part. Or you tell yourself, don't worry, we've got a new status quo. And I'm like, well, your new status quo is probably going to hold for a while. But you do realize that you're under the gun. Don't worry, I'll be all right. Well, you may be all right relative to us. I just don't think you're going to be all right relative to them. Because you see, you are feeding into a system of immorality, and you don't ever want to acknowledge or notice that system until it jumps up and does what it does. Like these white males at these colleges who grab these white girls, rape them by the dozens. He walks into court and the white male judge says, boys will be boys, let them off. They were expecting that. Remember, there was a couple of them that happened too, and they took them on TV and asked the white women, their lawyers, do you think this would have happened if he had been black? Oh, absolutely not. White women know it. White women know this. White women know that when they accuse a white man of something and they walk into court, it's a crapshoot. They know this. And when they, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, embolden that system, they are emboldening a system that has the ability to target them without mercy. Because you told yourself, don't worry, it'll just get the black folks. Don't worry about that. You are feeding an immoral, vicious beast. Yeah, you can get it to attack us as long as we're still around. Yeah, but when you're by yourselves, what is that immoral beast that you've created going to do? You think it's going to lose its appetite and stop eating? You think that immoral beast is going to get over its appetite for eating? Why do you think that the folks who most kill police officers are white folk? Why do you think the people numerically, and even that needs a lot of research into that because it's misleading, but a lot of folks who are harmed by police officers are white folk too. Now, never mind the fact that they probably did it. That doesn't necessarily give them the right to brutalize them outside of the law. Why is that? Because they're cutting their teeth. And if there are no black people around to brutalize, this immoral beast demands to eat. If there are no black people around to brutalize, this immoral beast is going to demand to have its fill. It's going to demand to continue eating. That's why every time you turn around, they bounce from one conflict to another, one war to another. That's why it is imperative, never-ending conflict. Because the beast needs to eat. It needs something. And while you have most been wanting to feed black people to it, it demands to eat all the time. And if there's not a black person around it can feed on, don't worry, Your white daughters are there. Your white sons are there. The random white person is there. There'll be somebody it can eat on, and it'll do it without thinking. While you're sitting up here with your history books, rewriting your history books, I warn you against the perils of rewriting those books. You sat around this country here as you watch white women, both Anglo and Latino. Latina, you watch white women sitting up here defending, ripping out pages from the history books, rewriting it, omitting it, forgetting the entire time that, by the way, if you had a properly written history book, it would tell you what those people did to your grandmothers and your great-grandmothers. Need I remind you all, the term squaw, when you talk about Native American females, when they talk about the squaw fur trappers, they call them fur trappers, but they talk about the squaw fur trappers in particular. Well, what the hell is that when you think about it for a moment? Well, they're referring to the pubic areas of the females. Yeah, they're referring to that. Oh, but don't worry about that. You can worship Zaddy, and don't worry about that at all. Don't let that bother you. And don't worry about anybody teaching you that either. No need to teach you that one. Put yourself in their good, generous hands. When you talk about the women of what today is Mexico, every time the white men would go down there, they wanted to start up their own harems. It's the same thing everywhere they go around the world. When you go to the Pacific Islands and everywhere else there, you got these folks racking up children all over the place while they complain of it in the States. And take a look at what they do over there. And European women who have so conveniently forgotten that the first property of the European males were not black people. Their first codified property were the European women. Their daughters have always been classified as property. The daughters did not get to choose to marry for love. The daughters were used as bargaining chips. If it was convenient for you to be in somebody's family, you go in. If it is convenient to sell you off, you're going. The old law of the rule of thumb. You all hear that phrase from time to time. Rule of thumb. Rule of thumb says, rule of thumb today is translated as, well, common knowledge or common wisdom says, but rule of thumb can draw its origins. It can draw its origins to an idea that you could beat your wife with something no thicker than your thumb. Although they use the word chastise. They use the word chastise. I would submit to you all today that the practice continues, whether you understand it or not. The practice continues. Only in the very wealthiest, well-to-do families that are most structured, the practice continues. And they stand around oblivious. Meanwhile, they've just totally disregarded the fact that, by the way, you have a country that's over 50% female, but your government isn't. You have a nation that's over 50% female, but your government isn't. Your judiciary isn't. Your media executives aren't. Your college presidents and executives and administrators aren't. So in other words, you are sitting around depending on nothing more than the goodwill of the very people that before we came along and diverted their attention. You talk about buck breaking of black folk. White women didn't have rights, not the way you understand them today. Before they had black people to focus that on, white women didn't have rights like that. That is something that comes along far later. You had, as a white woman, you had to prove your rights needed to be acknowledged. Remember the movie Braveheart? Remember the movie Braveheart? King Longshanks and the right of first refusal. That's not just legend. Some folks say it's overblown. Some folks say it's exaggerated. Although it's very interesting that as we dig into these things more across history, you start hearing folks say that those kind of things are exaggerated. Now, 20 years ago, nobody said those kind of events were exaggerated. Now that we've gotten to this crucial equilibrium, just like John Brown, they now want to start kicking dirt on it and say it's exaggerated. It wasn't like that. Now, all of a sudden, that's what they're saying. Very interesting. 20, 30, 40 years ago, no one was saying that. Now they do. Kind of makes you think that they want to say to you, you know what? As I've taught you all here before, what they are now deciding is that if the history of America no longer serves white supremacy, then to hell with the history of America. We will rip it out and erase it from the books. If Thomas Jefferson and George Washington have become net negatives, then reduce or outright eliminate them from the books. If remembering and recognizing American history diminishes our power as a people, then erase American history. Jettison it. We don't need it if it's going to de-empower us. We'll just take up from where we are. We'll just use the icons we have today. Why we can get, y'all don't understand, they can get just as far, starting with Bill Gates and Elon Musk, as they can with George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. If I'm telling the truth, give me the thumbs up emoji in the chat room. If I'm lying, give me the thumbs down emoji. Don't you all understand? They could start today. They could get just as much done by lionizing and making icons of Elon Musk and Bill Gates today without George Washington and Thomas Jefferson as they could trying to take you all the way back. Hell, who needs the founding of the country? We can just start right now. Hey, look, our founder is Elon. And our god of state is the Tesla T. I mean, isn't that like a cross when you think about it? Isn't that like a cross when you think about it? You take a look at that, it sure is like a cross up there, ain't it? It can be. They'll be just fine with that. Folks, they don't give a damn if you lionize George Washington, Elon Musk, or damn me, Mickey Mouse. Just so long as you are not challenging them for the number one position. But Jason, how in the world could they do that? That would be too difficult for them to be able to pull off because it would be too confusing. You gotta understand, see, that's for your consumption. There have always been two conversations that have been taking place in this country. The conversations that take place in front of black people and the conversations that take place when we aren't around. And every single place in America where there is a dollar bill being exchanged, there is a place there for a conversation that doesn't involve us. And I don't mean a metaphorical place there. I mean a literal one. If you work at Damn Meat Church's Chicken, there's a manager's office. If you work at AutoZone, there's a manager's office. If you work at Walmart, there's a manager's office. If you're on an airplane, there's the lavatories, there's the areas for the passengers to sit, then there's the areas for the airline stewardesses, flight attendants, and then there's the cockpit. If you ever saw that movie, was it Executive Orders? Was it Halle Berry and Steven Seagal? Or any of those movies where you got terrorists who take over the airplanes? I'm forgetting the Wesley Snipes movie. Wesley Snipes had a movie where I remember he was like an air marshal. Gary Busey was one of the bad guys. Drop Zone, I think it was. Drop Zone. Wesley Snipes in Drop Zone. You remember they got places on the planes where the executive decision. Okay, Passenger 57. I was about to say Drop Zone. Passenger 57. They got places on the airplanes where the flight attendants can talk to each other outside of earshot of the passengers. Outside the earshot of the passengers. And then you got the pilot's cockpit where ain't nobody there. Nobody can hear. Nobody can see. They can do all kinds of things without you knowing. Anywhere in America where there is control of a dollar being exchanged, there is a room there that is intended to make those exchanges, do those things without black folk being involved. That they can perform all their commerce and all their work without a single black person being there. And that is a tenet of their faith. They make sure they've got the ability to do that. Black folk, every damn thing we do is open to the public. Everything we do is open to the public, boy. You don't have to ask how much money we got. Just stick around on our Instagram or our Facebook. We'll show you. We'll show you. Just stick around long enough. These other folks, when things are coming in, they don't let you know. They want to make sure they understand the necessity of discretion. And this is a concept that we haven't been able to pick up on because we haven't been leading anything. That's why it's so important. Don't let black folks lead nothing, because if you get together and start talking, then y'all gonna have to start invoking some discipline. The Black Guerrilla Family, BMF, Frank Lucas, you name it, the Godfather of Harlem. When black organizations or black groups are successful, it is because there's discipline that has been invoked, not asked for. It has been demanded. You have to have discipline just to walk on the soil, just to walk in the room here. And what does that discipline always, whether it is the Nation of Islam, the Black Guerrilla Family, BMF, Bloods, Crips, what do they all require of you? Silence, discretion. We talk all right, but we only talk amongst each other. We don't talk to the general public. We don't talk to the general public. We talk amongst each other. And whatever we say here stays here. We do not disclose this to other people. It is not for other people's ears. And the black organizations and the black individuals who have made the most progress are the folks who know how to do that. Don Peebles is not somebody I talk about, it's someone I talk to. Don does that. Al Heyman is successful. He doesn't talk to a bunch of folk like that. The only folks he talks to are the people he gotta talk to. You know why? Because Al understood you can't trust other folk around here with information. If I'm gonna get something done, I gotta move in silence. People can't even have an inkling that something's happening, because the moment they do, if people know you're gonna do something, they also know what they need to now do to derail you and stop you. But they can't stop what they can't see and they don't know is there. They would have to run into it by accident. And unfortunately, there's not enough accidents in the world that will allow you to routinely derail something somebody's doing. You got to have solid information. You got to have solid information. And that's critical. Most of all, the problem with America is America has beaten down its black inhabitants, those who have contributed most to the landscape in order to keep us artificially enslaved and demarginalized. We could have turned America into the greatest empire that humanity has ever witnessed, and it would not be an empire currently in decline. America would not be an empire in decline today if America did not make its business to try to artificially hobble and handicap black people. It would not be an empire in decline today. America at the height of its abilities is always when you see black people at least beginning to assert themselves. That's when America's at the height of its abilities. When black people are handicapped and hobbled and handcuffed, that's when you see America decline. When black people are allowed to run free and do what we do, prosperity always follows. Ask the Asians. They can't find prosperity among white society. When Asians get off the boat and off the planes, they can't set up among white folk. Ain't no prosperity to be had over there. They have their choice of all the places they could go. They don't go set up nothing among white folk. If prosperity was among white people from the ground up, they'd all be over there, but they don't. The Arabs, they don't set up shop among white folk. If that's where prosperity is, why the hell ain't y'all over there? You routinely say, where the black folk at? Wherever we are in large numbers, prosperity will follow. Wherever we are unmolested, prosperity will follow. The Jewish population, they have made hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars by dealing with us, not the dominant society. Not the dominant society. They got it from us. From the Harlem Globetrotters to the NBA, you got it from us. Wherever black people are moving unrestricted, prosperity of untold proportions will follow. It always does. The Black Wall Street was the product of black people unrestricted. When we are allowed to move unrestricted, prosperity always follows us. That is why I'm going to say something here tonight. I usually do not do this. This is the first and probably going to be the only time that I ever do this. I have another channel here on YouTube called The Business. And this Friday, I'm going to be doing a special presentation where I am going to be updating some of your files and some of your philosophies and dealing with some things that I ordinarily would not be talking about. I ordinarily would not. I'm going to be going into some detail about it that I ordinarily do not go into. Here on the Black Channel, we're usually dealing with socioeconomics. We're usually dealing with the socio-political issues, and I get that. But I want us to have a conversation about upgrading what we do. And I'm talking about redefining it from the ground up. I'm talking about taking you someplace that you have not been. I am talking about taking you somewhere that you have not been. You're going to hear things you have not heard. It is time to put it in its proper context for you. So this will be one time that I do this. For some of the folks here who have not been a party to that, in recent years, I've made the decision that I want to focus on certain things and focus on specific things. And that's what I'm doing here now. As far as dealing with the nuts and bolts of what's coming up here next, I'm going to be dealing with it over there. It is time to update your files. And I'm talking about from the ground up. I'm talking about at a basic level. Whether your parents have touched on this or not, I don't care if you come from the poorest ghetto or the richest megalopolis in America or around the world. You are going to hear some things you haven't heard, and it is going to put it in its proper perspective for you. So if you are so inclined, we've talked about the problem with America tonight. But if you choose to, you may join us there in 2 days. Well, we're going to talk about the solution. Starting with your field of vision. Starting with your definition of these things. Starting with that. There's some things that you all have asked me for in particular. I'm going to say this right now. For some of my people here who've asked me for specific things in particular, some of the workshops that I've worked on and dealt with and things, they've been asking me for that, and I've been getting in touch with some people. I've been touching bases with some people, and I've got literally dozens of people now that I have helped get their CDLs, their HVAC, their IT. White supremacy is the problem with America. Now I'm discussing the solution. I've been discussing the solution for years, but now I'm going to take it to the next level. I want to take it to the next level with real, concrete, actionable things. Real, concrete things. So if you are so inclined, you may join us this Friday on my other YouTube channel, The Business. You can't miss it when you type in The Business on YouTube. It's gotten so big now that YouTube used to be able to suppress it. Now they can't suppress it anymore. It's the first thing that comes up. Just look for the gold B. That's The Business. You are welcome to join us there as we update your files and take things to a brand new level. I have done a lot to try to help other people. I've done a lot to try to impart and share with you so much of what I've gotten and what I've learned. And for those of you, you might not come from families of well-to-do individuals. You might not come from families of independent thinkers. You might not come from families of critical thinkers. Hell, you might not be in a city of critical thinkers, critical independent thinkers. It is time to update your files across the board. And that is what we will be doing this Friday. In the meantime, here on our broadcast, we're going to go ahead and open up the telephone lines. The number is 646-787-1933. That is 646-787-1933. Your personal access code to the blackest radio program in existence, the only one of its kind on planet Earth today, and as always, you are welcome to join us. I want to thank everyone here. Send a special thanks to everybody who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat, Venmo. Thank you very much for your support. We appreciate that. There are a lot of folks here who they give lip service, and that's not service. It's very, very easy to talk the talk, but it's very, very hard to walk the walk in that regard. So the brother Cocaine, thank you very much for your support. And to everyone else who has supported our program here tonight. We're going to go ahead and go to the telephone lines. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. Your personal access code to the Black Channel. Let's go ahead and get caller from area code 412. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, Jason. My name is Robert. I'm calling from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
All right, Robert from Pittsburgh. What's on your mind?
Okay. Brothers and sisters, I just want to let y'all know that we have in our midst, in time there may be many, but in this day there aren't any like the black media, led by Jason Black and others in that genre. So we have to protect and be diligent about what they're saying and apply it. It's a classic statement. You know, America, by hampering black people in this country, is cutting off his nose to spite his face. Remember the Wizard of Oz, the classic statement in the Wizard of Oz, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Basically, pay no attention to the bestial nature of this beast, who are bolstered by the media to be the top of the sexual prize. So they use melanated women around the world as sexual dumping grounds for their diseased perversions. That said, look at the commercials where they elevate images of this beast with melanated women only. All the videos on YouTube about melanated nations, they show beautiful melanated women to be an attraction for this beast. In closing, brothers and sisters, sexually starve this beast and let them wither on the vine. Melanated people, we need to wake up. And Jason, it's such an advantage and a blessing for us to have individuals like you who are making a stand and getting out the proper information to the people in general and to melanated people in specific.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight, brother. We appreciate it. Let me get caller from area code 626. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, what's going on, Jason? Am I audible for you?
Yes, you are. What is your name? Where you calling from?
Okay, I am. Good. Okay, my name is Sever. I'm calling over from the 626. I'm currently in Vegas, and I wanted to talk this about, how, the day really shouldn't be celebrated, in my humble opinion. I mean, there's so many different people that are over here that are melanated, and, we're in prisons. Like, I look at the way that myself, as somebody who has letters behind my name, you know what I'm saying, went through the university system in my 20s, owns a business, things of that nature, but yet I'm still over here disenfranchised on the streets, hit with generational poverty, and then I got to still go on this court case like I was talking about on the other episode, where I defended myself 7 years ago when I was 20 years old against an off-duty cop, and I still have to wait for this, and it didn't even do any damage to him. But if it did damage to me, no one would care. I'd just be another that I could say, I know what I could say.
Brother, thank you very much, though. You make sure you can call in once a week. So make sure you call in one time per week. And please have a different story to tell when you call back. Have a different story to talk about. Caller from area code 646. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Onan from Queens.
All right, Onan from Queens. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so there is a book called The Republic, written by Plato. And in the book, it addresses quite a few topics, but specifically justice, right? And there's a conversation between Socrates and Polemarchus and Thrasymachus about what is just, and if the individual within the society is able to get away with their crime, would it serve their purpose to be just? And it was found that the individual would not be just, that they would take advantage of whatever injustice that they know they could benefit from. And I think Black people would really stand to learn something from that book. And then another case I wanted to bring up was about Isaac Woodard Jr., who was assaulted in South Carolina. This was a World War II veteran, Black veteran, who was assaulted. in South Carolina by these police while still in uniform. And it's one of the reasons why I would never fight for this country. But I'm going to land my plane there, so B1.
B1, thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 323. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, good evening, Big Brother Jason. This is Brother Elijah calling out of Arlington, Virginia.
All right, Brother Elijah, what's on your mind?
Big Brother, after listening to tonight's broadcast and your brilliant broadcast over the weekend, this question comes to mind. And you was talking about it tonight with the injustices. Now that the affirmative action has been gutted, do you foresee, Big Brother, that the injustices of us are going to run rampant now? Under the guise of it was other non-white groups who did it.
Yeah, that's the strategy now. Is I've been talking about this over a decade. When we talk about the buffer classes, that's what we're referring to. They're using other groups as their front people, but when you take a look behind it, just like this, Students for Fair Admissions thing, when you take a look behind them, it's a white man behind that. It's a Jewish fella named Blum. There he is. So they're already doing it. They're not on their way. They're already doing it. They've already taken it to the Supreme Court. So yeah, we're not on our way to it. This is the normal. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller area code 731. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello.
Okay,
Hello,
brother. Are you being mugged over there? You're wasting our time. What is your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Marcus calling from Chicago.
Marcus from Chicago. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is you explained it and you touched on it. You talked about the Red Indians, and I wanted to further expound on that a little bit. I don't want to make it seem like I know more than you or anything like that, but if you know anything about husbandry, the husband plants the seed. So if you plant a pumpkin seed, it don't matter where you plant it. If you plant it in America or if you plant it in China, it's going to be a pumpkin. With that being said.
Caller area code 240. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, this is Nicole from PG.
Okay. Folks, don't say PG. Everybody doesn't live in Maryland, so let's where are you calling from? Don't use initials, folks. I know for the folks who live, we love our hood. That's great. No, everybody doesn't live where you do. So that be like me saying, hey, calling from the port city. Man, do you know how many ports there are in America? So.
Right. Yeah, so sorry about that. So again, Nicole from Landover, Maryland. So I wanted to just point out that I'm seeing some Black people saying that, this striking down of the affirmative action is great. When it's like they don't really understand that the fact that we have to have an affirmative action is white America, or just them saying that white supremacy. We'd rather not just remove the system, dismantle the system to give equal footing to Black Americans or to Black people, but we would rather just give a workaround. And now that I guess that's getting ahead of themselves or whatever, doing what they didn't intend for it to do, they're willing to take that back rather than setting the playing field level, dismantling white supremacy. They'd rather give this workaround that they can take back at will, as we're seeing them doing right now.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole goal now, and it's chaotic as it can be, but the whole goal is flip everything upside down. If we're not getting our way, flip the table over. It would be better to have a destabilized, chaotic situation where we're at least in charge of most of the chaos than to have a stable situation where Black folk have stability in it. So their whole thing is keep everybody destabilized. And if it does make some tremors and rumbles on their side of the fence, well, they're stable enough that they're like, we can weather that storm. So they're just to the point that they can just continually keep making storms now. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. I want to thank everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, CashApp, Super Chat. My girl Keandra in the Super Chat, you appreciate all of us. Well, I appreciate all of you too. So thank you very much, sister. I appreciate that. Cult-like personality is on deck. Thank you very much for being there. Mogul Mays has shown up here tonight. I appreciate that. Christine West again. Thank you very much for your support, sister. Cleavon McClendon. Ain't seen you in a minute, brother. I got you fired up, I guess so. And big shout out here to Miss Woods, my man Keith, and Mr. Dinkins, who've contributed to tonight's program. Thank you to all of you for showing up here tonight. I know you could have gone and tricked it off on fireworks. Thank you for coming here and making a few fireworks of our own. Caller from area code 346, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, Jason. This is Nick from Chicago by way of Evansville.
All right, Nick from Chicago, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I completely agree with you on the part that you said about white supremacy, not being able to function when all eyes are on them. And I just thank you for the program. Thank you for the channel and everything like that. And I got one comment as far as that. We got people out here building. Come next year, when I did a search on Juneteenth, for instance, all we see is the Pan-African colors or whatever they're trying to push on us. By this time next year, hopefully that'll be changed. When you type in Juneteenth, you'll see what it actually is about.
That's why we're starting early on it, not to let people confuse it. It's a whole lot easier to stamp these devils out and when they're small plants than wait to the size of trees and start trying to chop them down. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight, brother. Let me get caller from area code 470. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, good evening, Mr. Black. How you doing, sir?
Okay, take your phone off the speaker. I'll give you 5 seconds to get it off the speaker, Bluetooth, or whatever you're using over there. Take your phone off the speaker for us, so that way we can hear you clearly.
Hey, Mr. Black, how you doing? This is Johnny calling from Smyrna, Georgia, by way of Arkansas.
Okay, Johnny from Smyrna, Georgia. What's on your mind?
Hey, sir, how you doing? Man, I just want to call in. Thanks for the program. Our people really need to get reminded on this day that this is really not a day that we need to be barbecuing, popping fireworks, and so-called celebrating a very tarnished history of our people. I woke up this morning and a lady was bringing up somebody's groceries and wishing them a happy 4th of July and all that. As soon as she saw me, she couldn't say nothing. I'm like, yeah, just ring my groceries up so I can get going. A lot of our people hard-headed, stiff-necked, rebellious, and they still outside right now, blowing up fireworks and stuff. This day doesn't really. Well,
it's easier for some folks to live under narcissism and live in the delusion than it is to face reality. Because if you turn around and face the reality, you realize there's nothing to celebrate. There's nothing to dance around about. And that's a very crushing thing for most people, because once you understand that, there's only one thing that enters your mind. Now, what am I going to do about this? Thank you very much for giving us a call here. Once you acknowledge that there's something wrong with the world, now the next natural thing that's unavoidable, you have to now grapple with, what do I do about this? You can't turn your back on it then. Caller from area code 214, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Charles Henderson calling out of Elgin, Texas.
All right, Charles out of Elgin, Texas. What's on your mind?
So basically, I just moved out to Austin from Plano. I know all about what you're talking about with the replacement of just us. I mean, I've seen it just in Plano with them advertising Indian mayors, Indian governors, and Indian everything else, so that they can basically take the council seats, the political seats from us before we even think to even get them. So
you got that, but you got that, y'all in the Dallas Metroplex. There's a shopping center out there. There's a shopping center.
Koreatown.
Say again.
Koreatown. Governor Greg Abbott just designated Koreatown.
No, brother, you didn't. Calm down. There's a shopping center out there in Dallas. And I forget, I was zooming around there and stuff. I've actually got pictures of it. I took pictures of it last year. And I want to say it's around Trophy Chase, although it might be Las Colinas because it's the horses. And there's a shopping center there, and it's got, at least half a dozen East Indian-owned businesses in it. Right there.
Exactly.
In that one area right there. It's like half a dozen. There's like 2 or 3 restaurants and something else like that. Not in California, not in New York, in Dallas, Texas.
And Jason, how did they get to the point to where they can consolidate that much money to get a shopping district?
Good question.
You know, like how did they come over here and be able to get the money that we weren't able to get? I own 300 acres of land, man. Okay, I live out here in my shed. I just turning it into a tiny home. I moved out of Dallas because I just couldn't afford it. It's like, I own land. Why should I keep on paying Indians money? And so, you know, like, how are they able to amass the amount of fortunes that, like, is the government that's helping them? Is it local infrastructure? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, look, what you all have to understand is American foreign policy also extends to immigration policy. Let me say it again. You all need to understand. American foreign policy also extends to immigration policy. So the stroke that they got with these foreign governments is also contingent on how well they treat expatriates from these foreign governments. So, for example, well, Jason, why would America want to be friendly to Indians? How does that help them? Well, it's supposed to help, although sometimes it doesn't. Remember, I taught you all here a couple of weeks ago about BRICS. So that's, that alliance with Brazil, Russia, India, China, now South Africa, although France and some other places are saying they want to join. Well, how do you keep the Indians from being so super friendly with the Chinese? Well, you got to show that you've got friendlier relations to them. So India actually has a overwhelming, burdensome amount of regulations. And a lot of Indians want to make some money, but they're skilled, but it's not as easy to set up business in India as it is in America. So you got very friendly relations going on there. Mexico wants to have Mexicans freely. They basically don't want a border between America and Mexico. They just want to be this open thing because they understand that most of their people are going to give remittances back to Mexico. Up until recently, this was what you saw with the Chinese. Up until recently, China was real big on their people coming over here. H-1B visas and the whole damn 9 yards. They were really, really big on that until they realized that their billionaires and whatnot were preparing to leave because the situation over there, as far as human rights and civil rights, is so egregious. So now China wants to they've clamped down on the wealthy. They've gotten them first. Now they're moving on to the middle class. They don't want Chinese citizens picking up their wealth or picking up their money and going elsewhere. So this movement that should calm yourself down. Folks, I know it's the 4th of July. Calm down, y'all. Eat a hot dog.
Sorry.
The whole thing that they're doing is they want to clamp down on that because folks are picking up their wealth and moving elsewhere. That was the thing that they were in favor of when China was trying to build up its economy. Now that their economy is basically the largest and most versatile and progressive on earth, they're like, yeah, time to hang on to that wealth now. We don't need to send any more people to America. If we do, they're just going to be spies like that fellow they just arrested a few weeks ago. If they are, they're going to be spies. But we don't need to send people over there to develop economy anymore. We need them over here. So these policies that used to be real beneficial are backfiring. The only way these policies could still remain beneficial, you could do it, but now it doesn't give you leverage with the home governments. It's actually considered hostile to those governments now. America opening its doors to Chinese immigrants now and saying anybody and everybody who can get over here, get your ass over here, we'll set you up nice. China used to see that as a plus. They now see that as a negative. Hey, you messing with our money and you giving us a brain drain. We're not trying to have that. So these are not policies that came from nowhere. And these are not policies that don't serve a purpose. These policies and all these groups you see, they do serve a very clear, very real purpose. Allowing over all the Vietnamese immigrants after the Vietnam War was what allowed America to have leverage in Vietnam. And take a look at the situation that you've got now. Having so many of their expatriates over here actually gave you a block of citizens who still have ties to the land, but more importantly, interests to the land. And they've been sending those people back over there for decades. Now you've got a Vietnamese government that is very friendly toward America. Same thing South Korea. I can go down the list. So this is a strategy that in various places has either borne fruit or has backfired. But it's one that they intend to continue using. I'll let you have the last word.
My last thing was just, Jason, do you think that the Texas policy where they're passing to where Chinese nationalists cannot own land or anything like that, do you think that makes any effect in their bearing in the state? That was it. And thanks for the great broadcast.
That's a very tricky one to actually execute or implement. That's a very tricky thing to do that. I've seen it and heard it. On the one hand, you're concerned about national security and the federal government is checked out of it. Well, that's understandable. On the other hand, you're going to be cutting yourself off from a tremendous source of capital. That's the other side of it. And during economic downturns, people tend to get very agnostic about where investment comes from. Government doesn't create investment. Government can incentivize it. Government can facilitate it, but it cannot create investment. If you attempt to do so, you'll cause hyperinflation. That's the only, when government does try it, all they can do is print money. But that's counterintuitive. You need to create economic development, and that creates value. And from there, when you print more money, it's because you've increased the value of your nation. That's how you increase the money supply without increasing inflation. So when you've got money following an uptick in economic activity, that's not inflation. That's just expanding the economy. When you just start printing dollars, it goes the other way. China, by pegging their money to the U.S. currency, has said, yeah, we're not going to play that game with you all. You can play with your money, but we'll always be cheaper than you, which is going to make sure that we're always in an advantageous position. So do I think it'll work? I don't think it's actually going to do anything. Texas is a state, right, but it would be different. China is really more concerned. I mean, will it impact them? Sure, but not in any meaningful way. Now, if the federal government, because China doesn't have its cankles up over that. China's got more concerns over America banning TikTok. Now, something where you could black out a whole nation, yeah, they'd be concerned about that. But I'm going to tell you one more thing. China's not really concerned. Well, they are not as concerned about foreign investment as you all might think anymore. China is more concerned with using the wealth that they've gotten. They're already, the whole point of China's strategy, that if you were a foreign corporation and you come to China and it was mandatory that you had to set up basically a partnership business with one of their homegrown industries. That's always been their strategy. When General Motors came over, they had to set up and make a partnership with a Chinese automaker. But part of that partnership meant that GM had to open up all of his books and his patents. Same thing with Tesla. Same thing with Ford. Same thing with Volkswagen. Same thing with Toyota. So the leverage that they used was, okay, we're not gonna fight you over technology. If you want to do business with our middle class of 300 million people, you're gonna give it up. We're not going to fight you over it. You're going to give it. That's the requirement for you to even be able to set foot on our soil. You're not going to come over here and economically rape us, and then when you get done, pack up and leave like you did in America. You're going to come over here and help us develop our economy. So they've gotten to a point now that they are anticipating and expecting that you're going to start pulling up the drawbridges. They're anticipating and expecting that countries now are just going to stop giving them the access that they used to have. But here's the problem. You've already made them so wealthy, it's relative now. They're not as afraid as they used to be. Truth be told, if they were ever afraid to begin with. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller area code 872. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, this is Chris from the Bernie Mac City, Chicago.
Okay, Chris from Chicago, what's on your mind?
All right. Hey, so real quick, I hope I just ask a few questions. Hopefully they pertain to today's program. I know you're having a general discussion program. You said recently said, and I was waiting for that. But so I was just wondering. So I'm not a Hebrew Israelite, but I got a friend that's a Hebrew Israelite, and I just want to know. I'm not a Hebrew Israelite. Like I promise you, man. I got a friend that's Hebrew. I haven't seen him in 20 years.
Brother, what is your question? You're rambling. What is your question?
What is your opinion on Hebrew Israelites, sir?
I don't have one.
Yes.
Caller area code 838. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? And turn off your speakers. Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're proud to be something, although you're probably going to be less proud here in just a moment. But I don't know if that's a sickness or not. Caller from area code 626. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, really? Folks not paying attention. Caller from area code 918. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Marcus, and I am from Wichita Falls, Texas.
All right, Marcus from Wichita Falls. What's on your mind?
So as a traveling geologist working at oil and gas rigs, I travel all over the country, and I've noticed that places like Indian reservations are lackluster. They don't look good in terms of building for themselves, but I've noticed that when Black people try to build something, even if it's a startup, then it's sabotage. So that is my short comment there. And my question to you is, why is it when white supremacy is so blatant, when history has shown that when they're this blatant, that's the fastest way to get on code, for us to get on code and to fight back? So that's my question.
Okay, what is the fastest way to get on code?
With white supremacy, when they're blatant when it comes to policies with getting rid of affirmative action and doing these things to showcase their white supremacy, we usually get on code and we usually fight back. So my question is, why would white supremacy all of a sudden be so blatant and out in front, knowing that history has shown that we tend to fight back and get on code? That's my question.
because now you reached a desperate point. You can't be subtle anymore. Think about this. What folks don't understand is that in the 1980s and whatnot, you're dealing with a white population that was almost 90% of the country. Now you're slipping back down below 60%. Well, think about that for a few moments. When was white supremacy on American soil at its most vicious? When their numbers were lower. When did they get their most comfortable and maybe complacent? When their numbers were outrageously comfortable. Now that their numbers are slipping back down again, the further those numbers slip back down, the more savage and vicious things are becoming again. So what they're showing you is that we do not believe that our economic heft alone is going to be enough to maintain control. You're going to need more. And then you're going to have to be more blatant. We could afford to be more subtle when we were 90% of the population. We're not that anymore. We can't, and plus you have an internet where these people can openly, back when you had, not just you had 90% of the population and you had control of 99% of the wealth. You also had control of 99% of the communication apparatus. 99% of the mass media was squarely under their thumb. You couldn't let black folk know that the sun was shining in the morning if they didn't let you. Now you got a situation where we can talk directly to each other on a mass basis, no filters, no gatekeepers, no censoring. Ferguson was a bellwether moment. Ferguson was a watershed moment because for the first time in American history of media, you had black people out here on the ground showing you what was happening right outside of a major American city, and your cable television channels your major news outlets deliberately said absolutely nothing for 3 whole days. They ignored Ferguson. Ferguson was on fire. We all saw it. And we're all like, where's CNN? Where's MSNBC? Our so-called liberal friend. None of them were saying anything about that. It wasn't until 3 days later that they started talking about Ferguson. And the only reason they did that was because we would not relent. We wouldn't let up. We wouldn't let it go. So we didn't follow the mass media. The mass media followed us. That was a watershed moment. Because for the first time ever, you had a news story that was created from the soil. And we were just getting started. We were just beginning. That's dangerous. Yep. That's dangerous. Because what it means is that for them, they expect that when they tell you put down the cell phone, put down the tennis shoes, put down the ice cream cone, and listen to us, that's the only time you're supposed to do that, is when they tell you to. You're not supposed to be listening to some black folk on the internet tell you that, and then they stop what they're doing. We're not supposed to be able to have that kind of pull among black people. That Malcolm X moment where he raises the hand and the people fall quiet, he points the finger and they march off and disperse. That ain't supposed to happen. That's not supposed to occur. You're too powerful. No black person or group of black people is supposed to have that kind of power and influence where you're setting the agenda. If we said ain't nothing happening in Ferguson, damn it, nigga, ain't nothing happening in Ferguson. If we're not paying attention, if we don't think it's important, you shouldn't think it's important either. But we wouldn't stop. We kept going. We were relentless. It caught on. Everybody was talking about it. By the time the media got there, that was a moment there that they delegitimized themselves permanently. They will never recover from Ferguson. Never. And thank God that they won't be able to. They will never recover from Ferguson because now everybody knows, oh, you guys you're fake, you're phony, you're running an agenda. You don't go report things based on news. You report them based on what you think is in your best interest. You're perfectly fine talking about black people and racism against black people so long as nothing changes. MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CNN, all the New York Times, they have no problem talking about, ooh, woe is me, take a look at how low black folk are, so long as nothing actually changes. They'll acknowledge racism, white supremacy all day, so long as you don't do anything about it. We said, no, we're going to do something about it. So just keep that in mind. That's the situation that we're up against there. That's why they have to get more bold, more blatant, because the situation is getting more dire. The old subtle medicine doesn't work anymore. You're going to have to go to something stronger. You're going to have to go to something stronger. Well, they're more liable to fight back. See this from their perspective. Hey, Brad, wake up, dumbass. They're already in the streets fighting back.
Yeah.
See it from their perspective. Hey, if we go in on them, they're gonna get in the streets and tear it up. Look, they're already out there tearing it up. You better do something.
Yes.
So see it from their perspective. Because remember, you're dealing with a group of people who their interaction and contact with us is always of a phony or exploitative nature. It's not actually of a truly understand you nature. So when they deal with black people, white watchers, or they observe us, it's only for the purposes of figuring out, now, how can I manipulate you next? How can I exploit you next? How can I manipulate your reaction? How can I control it? When something gets out of control, they don't have a playbook for that. It's, well, let me just stomp you out. Because I don't genuinely understand you, nor do I wish to understand you beyond how I can control you. That's the most of understanding of you I want to get to. I don't truly want to understand you. I'm only here to figure out how to understand controlling you, not to understand you. So that's as far as it goes. If they actually did have an understanding of us, this wouldn't be necessary, but they understand enough. Malcolm X talked about that. He said they understand what you really want. They hear you crying out like a baby for freedom, justice, and equality. And knowing that they cannot give that to you, they try to get you a pacifier. That's the manipulation. How can I get you out these streets? How can I get you back on that cell phone? How can I get you back on social media talking about your thongs? How can I do that? Yeah, I know what you really want, but you see, that would change the status quo. So I can't actually give you that. Because see, I'd have to start working for a living. And we know that's not going to happen. So, what do we got to do to get you out these streets? What was that? Nothing. You mean freedom, justice, freedom, justice, equality. Yeah. You're still on that, huh? Okay, well, I was hoping we could do this quietly, but we can do this a little less quietly. We sure can. And that's when you start seeing the Ron DeSantis's and the Eric Adams's and their ilk showing up telling you, here come more police. Here comes the Supreme Court with their thuggery. Yes, because the lighter medicine didn't work. So now it's just like, all right, nigga, damn the pretenses. We taking the gloves off. You can have what you want if you can take it. That's their attitude now. All right, yeah, you can see us, but we run things. What the hell you gonna do about it? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're ignoring your voting rights. Damn right, nigga. So, all right, yeah, plantation, call it whatever the hell you want to. We're ignoring your damn rights. Can you force us to observe them? Yeah, you're right. Go make your movies, make your songs, sing your songs, make your hymns. Yeah, all that stuff. What you gonna do about it? Yeah, we're doing you. We sure are. Now what you gonna do? Now, in the cases where we stand up and do something, all that barking gets a lot quieter. But just understand where they are now. The Supreme Court can do that because they're going to swing their little gavels behind their robes and then go run out the back door. They're not going to come to Harlem, Dallas, Atlanta, and come stand on it. That ain't happening. Clarence Thomas does not live among black people, so he's not really going to have to stand by his actions. They got armed security and everything else. So those folk there don't have to actually stand by it. The rest of the society that has been tasked with enforcing these rules. Now, those are the ones who have to stand by it every day. Those are the ones who have to encounter you every day. So their perspective on it might be a little bit different. But if you want to know why it is, Jason, why they're getting so blatant, they have to. Now they gotta. They have no choice. I'll let you have the last
Understood, because yes. And the last point I wanted to make was I was living in Dallas back in 2016, right around the Michael Johnson situation, and there were times where I had to go a different route through work because I'm off of 75 right by the Galleria. There were protests everywhere. The block was really, really hot at that particular moment. So to add to your point, yeah, Ferguson did change things because I was there literally in the streets on my way to work with signs everywhere. Like there was a point where major interstates were blocked off. And so
in the modern era, the real thing is that was happening in the modern era, and it didn't require a Dr. King, a Malcolm X, a Marcus Garvey. They killed all the elder gods of state, and it didn't. Now they're saying the same thing is happening now times 10, but it doesn't require one of them anymore. The code is the leader. You have a population that now has different priorities, and most importantly, a different level of tolerance for your barbarism. This generation doesn't have the high threshold for your barbarism that the older ones used to have. This is a very precarious situation, and their playbook only says one thing: when barbarism fails, become more barbaric. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 626. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from? Okay, caller from 626 is doing dope. So we'll let them get back to hitting the bass pipe. Understand going forward here, folks, the problem with America, so that you understand what the solution is. You know what the problem with America is? The solution is you. The solution is you. It is you and me and us and we and everything that we do every day. We are the solution. White supremacy is the disease. We are the cure. But this is a disease that has metastasized and gotten very far along down the road. So it's going to take some extremely stringent medicine to deal with it too. Keep that in mind. It's going to take some very strong medicine to deal with it too. But first and foremost, to deal with the disease, you have to understand the disease. You got to understand where it came from. You got to understand how it operates. You got to understand its pathology. You've got to understand what makes it stronger. And you must understand, now you can finally understand how to make it weaker and wipe it out. You can't just start with make it weaker and wipe it out. You got to go through all those other steps to figure out how to deal with this in the first place. Why do I have to know where it came from? Because how can you prevent its point of origin? If you're going to wipe it out completely, you have to know its point of origin. If it didn't start in your house, then simply inoculating everyone in your house is not going to deal with this. If it started in your house, then yeah, inoculating everyone in your house will deal with it. But if it didn't start in your house, then just understand we're not doing anything. We got to know how it spreads. Is it bloodborne contact, sexual contact, bodily fluid contact, airborne? How does it spread? We got to know that. What makes it stronger? Is it like a virus, thrives in warmer weather, dies down in cold, or gets stronger in colder weather, dies down in warmer? What hurts it? What hurts it? What makes it stronger? Take a look at its pathology. Take a look at this membrane. Now that we understand all of that, now you can move on to the final step. Now that we understand what we're dealing with, now we know how to stop it. That's what you all are here for tonight. Now that you understand it, you now have an idea of what to do to stop it. For me, I'll be doing my part, as I always have, to help enlighten you further. Take the things that you learn and actually put them into practice. Take them and actually put them into practice. I want a big shout out here to everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program here. Kwame Kirkland, thank you very much. My man, Black Voltron, thank you very much for your support, brother. We appreciate that for all of our foundationals. YGLTB, not to be confused with LGBT. Thank you for your support. We appreciate that. And a big shout out to Vinny01 there on CashApp. Brothers and sisters from around the world, if you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the Haven of Intelligent Black Thought. We do this every weekend and every so-called holiday, because Black empowerment does not take a holiday. So click the red subscribe button, click the yellow notification bell, join us each and every time that we're here. If you haven't been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com, you want to go and check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Race War, all available on DVD and streaming. Go to blackchannelfilms.com. That is blackchannelfilms.com. I want to thank all of you for joining us here for tonight's program. Thank you for joining us live or recorded. And one more special note I want to make here before I go on. My other YouTube channel, The Black Authority, my other YouTube channel, as you all know, a couple of years ago, I had to stop broadcasting on that channel. First, YouTube demonetized it, which doesn't bother me. That didn't really bother me. But then they started going on a campaign of flagging my videos. And, we got over 140,000 subscribers on that channel. So I have not actually been using that channel for quite some time because of the harassment by YouTube. I'm planning to migrate back over to that channel here probably in the next few weeks. So I know you hate to see that and stuff. It seems like we're kind of bouncing around, but I had to do it for strategic reasons. But having the two channels has basically made it where banning us like they used to do in the old days is no longer an option like it used to be. When they start acting up, we can just go ahead and be very versatile and very mobile. So look for us to start setting up shop once again on our original channel, The Black Authority. For those of you who are already subscribed, make sure that you came over here. Just make sure you subscribe to that channel as well. Looking forward to seeing all of you over there when we move back over there. So just be looking for that, for a notification for that to be coming here in the next few weeks. We got bigger things coming and going, so I want you to be a part of that as well. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of The Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, The Black Authority. And until next time, all of my brothers and all of my sisters from around the world, remember, Black is the future, and the future is justice.